On this channel, one of the things I've often said is how I'm a fan of competition. I think with healthy competition in the market, you get innovation and also better prices. It's a huge win for consumers. So when I had heard rumors that AMD is possibly canceling their plans on releasing next-gen high-end GPUs, I wasn't too thrilled about it, as this can have some major ramifications on the market going forward. Let's discuss that in this video. Hey, if you enjoy content like this, drop a like, make sure to subscribe, and smash that bell so you never miss another video. Hey, what is going on guys? Danny here, welcome back to the channel and I hope you've all been doing well. We got a pretty big topic to talk about for this one, and when it comes to these kinds of rumors, you obviously, want to take this stuff with a grain of salt, but with that said, you do also want to take into account the track record of the source along with the current landscape of the market. If I told you that I had a source which said that Nvidia's next-gen flagship RTX 5090 was going to be 3x faster than a 4090 and cost $799 because Nvidia is having a change of heart and they feel sorry for gamers, you'd instantly disregard it and tell me to go seek help because given the circumstances we're dealing with, that will never happen. When I had heard rumors that AMD was canceling their plans on releasing high-end cards for their next generation RX 8000 series, I'm not gonna lie, I was a bit conflicted about it because if you think about it, AMD's only just recently gotten back to competing, well, sort of competing in the high-end and enthusiast segments. Before the RX 6000 series, we had the RX 5000 series, RDNA 1, with cards such as the RX 5700 XT and RX 5700. The 5700 XT and 5700 gave Nvidia counterparts like the RTX 2070 and RTX 2060 a good run for their money, which then made Nvidia do a refresh with the Super series. However, they didn't have any GPUs that competed with cards like the 2080 Super or 2080 Ti. That was back in 2019. Prior to that, in 2017, we had Vega, which only managed to compete with the GTX 1080, but they didn't have anything to compete against the GTX 1080 Ti, nor the Titan. Also, Pascal had already been out for over a year at that point, because in 2016, when AMD had released Polaris, their highest end offering was the RX 480, which at the time was an excellent GPU, but they didn't have a big Polaris that could compete with the GTX 1070 or 1080 at the time, until they had released Vega, but by that point it was just too late. Their RX 6000 series was the first time in quite a while where we had seen a generation from AMD which could go neck and neck with each of Nvidia's offerings, 6950 XT versus 3090 Ti, 6900 XT versus 3090, 6800 XT versus 3080, 6800 versus 3070 Ti, and the list can go on. Those were some exciting times, man, because after so long we had options from either side that could probably have started a pricing war, but unfortunately the mining boom just had to ruin everything. If you recall, Nvidia had released the 3080 at $699 at launch, and it was selling for around that price because the release was just kind of at the cusp of mining. However, had we been in the middle of the mining boom and Nvidia released the 30 series, you really think they would have priced the 3080 at $699? No, absolutely not. It would have probably been like $999. The point is that if there was no mining boom, then I think the previous generation would have gone down as one of the best periods in graphics card history. The 6700 XT would have probably been $100 cheaper, and the 3060 Ti would have sold for like $330 instead of $399. That would have helped us in the future, as then Nvidia wouldn't have been so bold at increasing prices for the 40 series. They did that because they saw how people were willing to pay $200, $500, or even $800 above MSRP just to get their hands on a GPU. Naturally, as a business that aims to maximize their revenue, they wanted to normalize the prices, hence we saw them do just that with the 40 series, and they tried to release a 4080 12GB, aka the 4070 Ti, which is really a 4070 for $900. Had all that craziness not have happened with the shortages, then I don't think it would have been this bad, or perhaps prices would have risen anyways because they could have just cited the inflation excuse so many other corps have been using these days. And look, I'm not one to deny inflation, but when you see products go up well past the rate of inflation, you're just blatantly taking the piss at this point. Now, I went off on a bit of a tangent there, but the main takeaway is that in a normal market, you want to see options like that from both manufacturers so that prices can remain competitive and ultimately you, the consumer, are going to be the winner. I wanted to bring this up so you can let that simmer in the back of your mind as we discuss this rumor. It started with a tweet from a user on Twitter known as Kepler_L2 who said Navi 4, so he's referring to the RD RDNA 4 and RX 8000 series will not have any high-end GPUs. He says to think of it like a generation similar to RDNA 1 and Polaris, where we just discussed how AMD had only made GPUs that targeted the mainstream and entry level. Well, I guess the 5700 XT can be considered mid-range, though he did also say he's confirmed this with 3 other sources. Now, Kepler has leaked stuff before, so it's not like this information is coming from a nobody. Apart from them, we did also have Red Gaming Tech and All the Watts, who we just recently sourced in my last video, also mentioned the same thing, that when it comes to Navi 4, there just aren't going to be high-end enthusiast graphics cards, and perhaps there won't even be a mid-range considering All the Watts mentioned there would be no Navi 42 either, but we're going to talk about that in just a moment. Now, nobody has really gone into too much detail as to why this could be happening. Red Gaming Tech did briefly talk about how AMD weren't able to meet their targets for the high-end, or in order to make it so that the higher-end cards could achieve those targets, it'd take a lot of work, which AMD just isn't interested in doing or investing in. Now, I'm not going to spend much time on talking about what went wrong, but if you just take into consideration the disaster which is RDNA 3, and if RDNA 4 was supposed to build upon that and be a more refined architecture, I can see why this didn't work out for them. With MCM, when we started to hear about this design, I was optimistic because I thought not only would this have a major impact on efficiency, yields could be better, but how could a design like this improve performance? And as we saw with Navi 31 and Navi 32, it barely did jack shit apart from improving their margins. If the result was only going to be marginally better with Navi 41 and 42, then it's not surprising they would come to this decision. Now, I know some of you guys might be thinking, well, why would this be such a big problem? Don't most people buy mid-range and mainstream graphics cards anyways? Who cares if there's no competition in the high-end or enthusiast segments? That's not going to affect me. We'll get to the mid-range in just a moment, but if AMD is absent from the high-end, then this basically gives Nvidia free reign to do whatever they want, and if you raise the ceiling, then the bottom floor comes along with it. With there being no high-end competition, Nvidia wouldn't have to worry at all about pricing. I mean, it's not like they even care right now, but don't be surprised when the 50 series is announced and the RTX 5090 is $2599 MSRP and only improves upon the 4090 by around 40 to 50% rather than the 70 to 80% increase we got when going from a 3090 to a 4090. Nvidia wouldn't have to be worried about what reviewers or people in the PC hardware community bash them for. They know the folks who are after the best will have no other option. There are people out there right now, if Nvidia released an RTX 4090 Ti at $2,500, which can only be around 15% faster than a 4090 at best, at this moment would actually sell off their 4090s just to have the best. But don't worry, for the people out there who don't want the fastest and don't want to pay $2599 for a 5090, well, here we have a 5080. It'll probably be around 10% faster than a 4090 and cost you $1,600. What are you going to do? Buy AMD? They don't even have anything that can compete against the 4090 right now. So this will be another GPU uncontested, which means they can price it at whatever they want. Don't want to pay over $1,000 for a GPU? No problem. Here's an RTX 5070 for $999. Again, what other alternative do you have? You see where I'm going with this? Just because you may not be buying the higher end GPUs doesn't mean you'll be unaffected by this. Now, when it comes to AMD, if they're only going to be releasing Navi 43 and 44, then this will get tricky. It really comes down to how fast RDNA 4 will be, and as of now, we just don't have any information out there indicating that. Along with that, at least for AMD's performance targets, they just don't mean anything at all. When we had first heard that the target for RDNA 3 was a 50% performance per watt increase, I saw people theorizing that this was going to be AMD's greatest generation ever, and we'll see Navi 33 be as fast as a 6900 XT or Navi 21. Obviously, that was way off the mark. I think what will happen is Navi 44 will mostly be used for laptops, and maybe down the road they could release an 8500 XT using that Navi 44 die. From Navi 43, we could see them release an 8600, an RX 8700, and even an RX 8800. If you take a look at their current gen lineup and the recent leak we talked about, AMD is planning on releasing an RX 7800 XT, which won't even be faster than an RX 6800 XT for around $550. This is using a Navi 32 die. In a normal market, a move like this doesn't make any sense, but if your plan is to shift SKUs once again next generation, then this way you've conditioned people on what to expect in the future. Since AMD will be absent from the high end, this also gives Nvidia the full green light to raise prices, which means their mid-range and entry levels will be even more expensive. You're going to end up in this scenario where Nvidia will have an RTX 5060 Ti sell for $600, and AMD will be competing against it using an RX 8800 at $550, except this time they're giving you a 43 die instead of a 42 die. It's a continuation of the strategy both of these manufacturers are essentially pushing today to keep margins as high as possible. Unfortunately, this wouldn't be frowned upon because people will fall for the naming, as we've seen in the past. And they'll also take into account how last gen, that being the 7800 XT, it was the same price, so I guess it makes it okay this time. It's all conditioning, that's what it is. Now, this could only happen if AMD doesn't want to compete and just wants to continue following Nvidia's lead. If we look at this from another angle and hope that perhaps they'll have a change up in their strategy and actually start wanting to compete, especially with the upcoming threat from Intel, then they could get really aggressive with their pricing like how they did with Polaris. It's a possibility, and I wanted to also highlight this for the folks who want to remain optimistic. Me personally, I just have no faith in them, and given all their recent actions of shifting SKUs and not naming things correctly, it doesn't seem likely. But hey, if Intel brings out Battle Mage and it's a hit and is competitive, then they'll be left with no choice because then Intel is just going to take up their margins. Again, we're just going to have to wait until there's more information out there for Navi 4, and if this time they'll actually be able to bring a solid leap in performance gen on gen. Let's say if they're able to get 50% over Navi 33, then they can offer RTX 4070 levels of performance for under $300. That could be something that might get people's attention, though I'm doubtful for that. Kepler also mentioned in a response to another tweet that Navi 43 will also be using a 128-bit bus. Yep. Alrighty guys, so this has been a pretty heavy topic, and I'm sure we're not done with it just yet. There are some interesting times up ahead. Unfortunately, most of it looks gloomy. I for one am not happy at all because, as I said, as a fan of market competition, this is the last thing I want to see. I personally think that the strategy going forward is what I've been telling you guys to do today. If you're not buying the ultra high-end enthusiast cards, then ignore everything new and buy discounted last-gen parts. Look for open box deals or go to your local used market. The GPU market is basically becoming similar to the automotive market. Buying the latest doesn't make sense for most people. Unless you've got a lot of cash, or depending on where you live, you could go on a equal payments, no interest purchasing plan. Some stores do offer that, but hey, if you wanted good bang for the buck, look for last generation. Just wait, we'll see RX 7900 XTXs probably fall to around what 6950 XTs are going for now when the new generation is close to us. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, AMD could do just that. They could release new lower end Navi 4 cards, and if you still need more performance, then discounted 7900 XTXs will be what they advertise. Anyways guys, we'll touch base in the next video. If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then leave a like. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Be sure to check out the video description for cool links and ways to support the channel, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then consider subscribing, I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.